cause, but can they change minds? Margie Omero is a Democratic pollster. Hector Barreto is the chairman of the Latino Coalition and former SBA administrator under President George W. Bush. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
So we know these protesters, Hector, have been fasting for weeks. They've prayed at the offices of Speaker Boehner. But in the real world, does something like this help to get bills passed?
Well, I think it brings attention to the issue, and this is a very important issue. We were very hopeful earlier in the year when the Senate passed their bill that there was going to be more movement on this. You know, the reality is they don't have a lot of days left in this year, and they got a lot of big issues. So this probably is going to be something that's going to be tackled at the beginning of the next year. And
even if it waits until next year, there's still this argument over how to get it done. And there's the article in the National Review that looks at the benefits of a step-by-step plan rather than a comprehensive bill. Quote, if you think amnesty is a good idea, argue for that on its own. If you also think Congress has a responsibility to procure additional cheap labor for its billionaire benefactors, make your case for that separately. But mixing these two issues muddles the debate. And Margie, as you know, the president recently said he could support a bill that was sort of in pieces. Would that increase the chances of getting something done?
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, look, you have a lot of Republicans now all of a sudden have a plan for efficient lawmaking when it comes to immigration, something that they have been reluctant to work on. Never mind that they've been the least effective Congress in history on all issues taken together. And look, this may be politically controversial in Washington. It's not politically controversial among voters. 2/3 of voters who voted in the 2012 election said that they support a path to citizenship. Even a majority of Republicans say they support a path to citizenship with some requirements, which is what the plans on the table would likely include. So you have a lot of folks here in Washington who seem to think that this is somehow a losing issue for them. It's not. If you look at poll after poll after poll, a plurality of voters said recently that they feel our immigration system is broken, and about as many say it's an urgent priority as say it's a priority for the next year or two. So this is something that voters want, that's something they're in agreement with, and they're looking for Washington to actually take some action.
Well, since they haven't taken action, do you think, Hector, that's the reason why a lot of states where there is some support for immigration reform, that they're taking it up? We used to see that we would hear, particularly from some border governors, well, we're going to have to toughen up the border on our own because the federal government isn't doing it. Now it's the other side of the issue. For example, in Illinois today, some undocumented immigrants are getting the chance to apply for those temporary Illinois driver's licenses. It doesn't make them a citizen or allow them to work, but it does give them the freedom to at least drive without the fear of being picked up. And 10 other states, I should say, have passed similar laws, Hector. Is that what we're going to see here if something doesn't happen on the federal level, this kind of crazy patchwork across the country?
I think you're going to see more of that because I think states are having to deal with the reality on the ground, and they're not going to wait for Washington, D.C. to continue pointing fingers at each other and arguing and blaming the other guy because they can't come up with a perfect solution. So I think you are going to see that. But I also think that we're going to have to deal with the reality that this system's been broken for a long time. As I remember it, it was Ronald Reagan that passed the first major comprehensive immigration bill. I know that under our administration, President Bush tried to get something done during his administration. So there have been efforts. But look, there's a lot of folks that I don't agree with on everything that are starting to say, you know what, we're going to have to treat this almost like the civil rights movement. We're going to have to break this down into pieces and just keep moving the ball forward. But we cannot keep the status quo that we have. It doesn't work for anybody.
Well, I mean, the political equation is so interesting, I think, in this case, because as you pointed out, Margie, when you look at the polls and you look at the demographics of the voting public, it just makes sense. Now we're seeing Chris Christie, who of course is being named as a possible nominee in 2016, being accused of flip-flopping on in-state tuition for young undocumented immigrants because his critics say he wants to run for president. He says he continues to support the idea, although he won't sign the specific bill that was passed by his state legislature. Here's what he said yesterday about that flip-flopping charge.
I'm for tuition equality. As I said that night at the Latino Leadership Alliance, I'm for tuition equality. I'm not for adding tuition aid grants. I am not for allowing undocumented out-of-state students to have rights that citizen out-of-state students don't have in New Jersey. And I'm not for an open-ended commitment that not even the President of the United States was willing to grant in the executive action he took in the aftermath of the DREAM Act not being passed.
This, as you know, Margie, very savvy politician, has won over a lot of votes. I think he won 51% of the Hispanic vote in his most recent gubernatorial race. What do you make of this controversy?
Well, he didn't win 50% of Latino vote after people heard that statement. I mean, look, he's trying to appeal to everybody, and he's going to end up not appealing to a lot of people as a result. There's a certain sect of Republican primary voters that are not going to accept any kind of compromise when we're talking about Dreamers, or any kind of recognition of Dreamers in state tuition or in any capacity. And then you have a lot of Latinos and a lot of folks. Again, it's not just a Latino issue. Voters across the country are supportive of a path to citizenship, and we're talking there about young people where you see even more support. And they're going to say, what is the big deal here? And who is Chris Christie? Is he trying to run as a moderate who tells his party when they're being too extreme? Or is he somebody who is kowtowing to a fringe element in Republican primary voters? And people are going to say, maybe he's just another politician as opposed to somebody who is espousing straight talk. So I think that's where you're going to find Chris Christie trying to navigate over the next year. We'll see, next couple of years, and we'll see how he does.
Margie Omero, Hector Beretta, we'll talk more about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's check the news feed this morning.